What is up, guys? Welcome to the RotoBaller YouTube channel. I'm Pierre. With me is Nick, and we're going to talk about some sprint speed risers and fallers. We call this 3 up, 3 down. Look at some guys who in fantasy baseball have seen their value go up or down in recent weeks. And this time we're going to focus on the speedsters because we all have the need for speed, unfortunately. But Nick, let's start with the definition of sprint speed. Why does it matter for fantasy value? Because running fast doesn't always equal stolen bases.
No, it stolen bases is kind of a tough nut to crack sometimes, just because it's not just the speedsters. It's we'll talk about sprint speed, but that's there's sprint speed, and there's also 90-foot splits, that kind of speed. There's also how much your team is actually running, and that plays into it more and more. Like we've seen trend over the past 3 4 5 years now of teams running less and less, and so that plays a big part of it. And you can also go the other direction. It's like, not just because someone is slow doesn't mean they can't be a little crafty with their, pick their spots a little bit better and get their bases this way. But sprint speed is a night. We'll talk about a lot of factors and trying to judge stolen bases performance, but sprint speed is kind of nice. It's just like a general, like, you're fast, and you'll have a better chance of getting caught. But like we'll talk about, there's a lot of factors.
Yeah, being fast definitely is the first step towards stealing. It does matter, but it's not the end all be all. You can have a guy who has elite sprint speed, but doesn't necessarily run because, well, A, you have to get on base first. That usually helps. And then B, be on a team that is going to give you the green light. And some teams are a lot more generous than others. And like you said, we'll get to that too. But also, keep in mind, like you mentioned, that the sprint speed number itself, that's what pops up on the Statcast page, but it's not the end all be all. Right, so keep that in mind. So let's dig into some risers first. Let's go with 3 up. And the first one has to be Ramon Loriano because, well, leading the league in steals, which everybody saw coming, not. Uh, it's interesting that he has 8 steals so far. He did have a little bit of success stealing a couple years ago when he was fully healthy, but never expected to be a guy necessarily who's going to be among the league leaders. I think after last year, we just kind of gave up on that too because he really stopped running too much. Here's what I think is interesting because we look at sprint speed itself. His sprint speed has actually gone down every year since his rookie season. He started out with a 92 percentile sprint speed, and so that's when everyone was expecting him, maybe be kind of a 2020 threat. And it's gone down and down and down. It's in the 69th percentile, which is still good, but not elite. So it's odd that we see him now among the leaders here, especially because he's on a team that all it's doing is hitting home runs. So what's the explanation for this with Loriano? Because last year he's looking like he was going to be a guy who's going to be more of a power threat than a speed threat.
Yeah, and then this year he just comes out of the gate just blazing, running. He's got 8 stolen bases already. You mentioned sprint. It's funny, he's sprint speed has went down, like you said, the past couple of years. Like you were talking about, like we were talking about earlier, like digging into it a little bit more. But like, yeah, his sprint speed has went down. But remember, that is kind of a an averaging out of the total running around the base pass. His home plate to first base splits. So how fast can you run 90 feet? That's actually went up the past couple years. It's 4.3. Gone from 4.1 to 4.24 to 4.36. So while his total sprint speed has been dropping, his home plate to first has been increasing. So that's a quirky little thing. And but yeah, he Oakland is hitting home runs like crazy, but Laser Loriano is running like crazy. He's had speed, but it's not like ridiculous speed, like 84th percentile sprint speed in 2019, 76th last year. It's down to 69th this year, but he is running. Oakland is running. They are first in stolen bases, third in attempts, third in attempts per PA. Now, you also got to take into the fact that a lot of that is Loriano. Uh, you know, they don't. They have a couple other guys that have a smattering of stolen bases, but the attempts per PA is impressive to see. And just as far as like long term, it's like I like to see, in these April months, like stolen base tendencies, like as far as teams, just as a general, try to get a sense of a general philosophy that a team has on running. We'll talk about some other teams later that seem to be running a lot, but early, like for Loriano at least, like Oakland is saying, go laser go. So I guess he's just going to be a stolen base guy now, and that's what we're going to see until he inevitably gets hurt.
All right, way to kill the buzz for all of us at the end who have Loriano. Yeah, well, he's not hitting home runs either, so I think he's hitting like 206. So, I mean, if you got him, you better hope he keeps running because that's pretty much all he's giving you at this point. But, I mean, hey, who else is stealing as much as him? Nobody. So, um, now let's go to another name that's near the top of the stolen base leaderboard that we did not expect. Because, again, a guy who looked like he was going to maybe run less, if at all, and he was expected to give us power instead of speed and then flip the script on us. And that's Javi Baez. There's just so much. I think we spent a good half hour just digging into Javi Baez before we got on here because he's a very fascinating case this year. But let's just stick to the subject here of stolen bases. Why all of a sudden is he deciding he wants to run? Because he still has plenty of pop. His sprint speed has also gone down. So it's curious that all of a sudden, he's getting the green light. Is this maybe a factor the Cubs just needing to generate more offense because their players are just kind of declining across the board?
Yeah, I guess like I guess Baez just like I guess I'm just gonna run like crazy and I'll do it that way. Uh, yeah, he has 5 stolen bases through 16 games. He had 3 in 2020, 11 in 2019. The most he's ever had is 21 in 2018 in 160 games. So the fact that he's got 5 already is pretty interesting. And once again, looking at like team tendencies, the Cubs are running. I guess because they're not hitting, they're gonna open up the base pass a little more, but they're 7th in stolen bases, 7th in attempts, 7th in attempts per plate appearance. So I guess Baez is that's what he's doing now. We were, like you said, we talked about him quite a bit before we got on air. He's an interesting case, and the fact that he's now he's got .065 stolen bases per plate appearances. That's triple more than, or I'm sorry, he's got .078 stolen bases per plate appearances. That's over triple the best he's ever had before. So and same on attempts per PA, .078 again attempts per PA, almost triple. 2.5 times more attempts per plate appearance than he's ever had before. So I don't know what has lit the fire under Javi Baez, but considering how poorly he's hitting fastballs and the fact that he has a 50% K percent and a 1.5% walk rate, like that's crazy. So you better hope that he's stealing bases because that K to walk rate is gonna take the train off the tracks pretty soon.
Yeah, that's what's crazy is he's managed to get 5 steals when he literally never takes a walk. Like he just doesn't. He refuses to, and he's striking out at an insane rate, which I don't know how he could even sustain that. Let's hope he doesn't. But it's got to be a team tendency thing because I look through the box scores like each morning, and then I see the other day I saw like Hayward stole a base. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. But he'll do that from time to time. But then like Wilson Contreras, the catcher, steals a base. So I think that they just have to make a conscious effort because, like I said, I've been saying this all preseason. I think we've seen the best we've seen from Chris Bryant, and maybe he gets traded, and Rizzo is kind of already hit his prime, and this is kind of just a team in decline in general, especially on offense. So, if you have to steal a base to try to, produce a run, then you're going to do it. And I think that's what's happening here. And then speaking of teams running, so the top of the heap here is the Royals. We have a couple guys that we pointed out. Let's just do a threefer, right? A three pack here, and our third riser. We're going to talk about Whit Merrifield, Andrew Benintendi, and Nicky Lopez. All are stealing. Um, so the Royals, it's not a surprise to see them running because last year they were actually at the top in stolen base attempts per game. This year they've actually upped it even more, averaging 1.25 stolen base attempts per game. So if you get on base, you got the green light. I think what's most interesting is because you can look at last year's stats and basically attribute it to Mondesi, right? Well, yeah, of course, you got a guy who's going to lead the league in steals. You're going to get a lot. He hasn't even played yet, and yet they're running the most. So this is just how it's going to be. If you're on KC, you get the green light no matter what.
Yeah, apparently so. Yeah, like you said, that's the craziest thing is that they're leading all these team stolen base categories without Mondesi, the most prolific base stealer we have going into majors right now. So, yeah, Mike Matheny is just gonna let him run and run some more, which is really nice for Merrifield owners and people who got Benintendi cheap. And like you said, Nicky Lopez has a couple of stolen bases, which is good because Nicky Lopez isn't going to give you a lot of other things. So yeah, I think this is like you got to feel really solid. Benintendi is fine and whatnot, but Merrifield is a top 40 pick, and you got to feel pretty excited about how much he is running early because we there was that blip year for Merrifield. Like after he had 34 stolen base in 2017, 45 in 2018, and then he only had 20 in 2019, and that was like the first year he was really like starting to be like taken seriously as a fantasy asset as far as drafting wise. And so it's nice to see he had 12 last year in the short season, and now comes flying out of the gates this year. He plays every day. The Royals are going to let him run. So yeah, I'm loving life if I'm a Merrifield owner because I'm thinking that 30 30 stolen bases is well within range.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think we could say the same for those other guys. Lopez is actually hitting pretty well, but still, someone who's hitting near the bottom of the order. And of course, Mondesi is supposed to come back at some point, which might eat into his playing time. Any quick thoughts on Benintendi? Is there any hope? I mean, he's stolen a couple of bases somehow, even though he's only hitting like 169.
Like yeah, like I mean, I guess he's alive, so that's nice. That like he's earned some fantasy dollars for people, which he hasn't done in a while. I don't know, man. I thought he was a nice little wild card pick because his draft price had gotten so out of control cheap going into this year that it's worth spending a late pick on him. But he's got, man, if he didn't have those 3 stolen bases, like he would be just a basement level fantasy player. And you mentioned he's got a 193 average, a 239 WOBA, a 50 WRC plus after he had a 44 WRC plus last year. It's, man, like he's big strikeout rate still around. He's not walking, he's not hitting, and he's got to manage to steal a couple of bases. But besides that, like the fall of Andrew Benintendi continues.
Yeah, it's kind of sad to say. It might be broken beyond repair at this point. Not sure what happened. The swing. It just, yeah, it's still early. We'll give him a little more time before we pass judgment on this season. But it doesn't look like the move to KC has really changed much for him. So, yeah, I don't think worth starting just for the steals alone. I'd probably go with Lopez instead. All right, so those are actually our 3 up, our risers. Let's go to 3 down now. Some guys that you really were hoping on major production for, not just in steals, but in this case, guys who should be 5 category contributors, not getting the job done. Well, really, in any of these. So hold on to your chairs because this might be a rocky ride. If you're a Fernando Tatis Jr. Owner, then you already know the deal. So he's hitting 160. I think that's where I got 169 from. He's hitting 169, only one steal. But there's, of course, a bigger issue at play here. We're not going to play doctor. We have our injury guru, Mr. Reuven Guide, to do that for us. But, he and Ariel Cohen, friend of the show here, has talked about this in detail. And, look, it was never a good idea for him to just come right back from the injured list for what it looked like a pretty serious injury. And sure enough, it wasn't a good idea. Depending on whether he plays or doesn't play and whatever's going to happen, are we going to assume that if he does play, that he is going to even run at this point? Because Ariel brought up the fact that you just can't count on the steals at all anymore. Because even if he's playing, he's not going to risk injury to that shoulder, and it's just not going to happen. Are we just going to count him out now for the 20 plus, 30 plus steals?
Yeah, I think you have to until we get some evidence to show us otherwise. I like I mean, I'm not a doctor, obviously, but man, it sure seemed like he came up back awful fast from what looked to be a pretty serious injury, and I, I can't imagine, like, they've already kind of, like, they've told us, like, it's not a matter of like it being healed. Like, he didn't heal in the past couple weeks. It's just like he can't make it worse, and that's not, I don't think that's a very good situation for assuming that someone is going to be running a whole ton, which, it's a shame. I mean, it's a shame for a million different reasons, just because being deprived of Fernando Tatis Jr. just kind of stinks in general. But, you know, once again, kind of like the Royals, even without Tatis stealing bases, you know, he has 0 this year. The Padres are stealing like crazy. They're number 1 in stolen bases, number 1 in attempts, number 2 in attempts per plate appearance. So if Tatis was healthy, like, they would be letting him run. They are not letting him run. Since he's come back, I find it hard to believe. I mean, we'll know when he starts running. Until I actually see him, like, running a reasonable amount, like, I'm not going to believe it. I would be writing, if I'm a Tatis owner, I am assuming that it's going to be a handful of steals from this point out.
Yeah, definitely not what you expected. Anywhere close to what you expected if you took him number 1, number 2, 3 overall, whatever it was. I mean, we're just gonna have to prepare for that. And I kind of started this. I was gonna write up still might write up an article. Might be the time to buy into Ha-Seong Kim, who could be his replacement if he's going to be out for extended time, which we thought it was going to be. He's a guy who could definitely pile up some steals. So I would say now might be the time to stash on Kim. But let's go back to another faller here. A guy who was a top 40 pick in most drafts, Kyle Tucker. Also not running, also not doing many good things with the bat. Expected to be, like I said, a 5 category contributor. 0 steals so far, but what's crazy is if we look at the sprint speed, it is way down. He's in the 25th percentile, and that's a little jarring because this is a really young player who had good speed. Doesn't appear to be any injuries. He's probably one of the few Astros that has been playing every day. So, what's the deal with Tucker?
I don't know. Like, that's, it's early and it's April, and maybe the limbs just aren't loosened up yet. But, we don't have, he doesn't have enough qualified runs yet to know his, Statcast doesn't have his home plate to first splits listed. So we don't know if there was a drop off there. But I mean, it's a dramatic drop off in sprint speed. Like, he went from, 27-9 in 2019, 27-6 in 2020, 25-6 in 2021. And, like you mentioned in percentile, that's going from like the 70th percentile to the 25th percentile. So like, that's a lot to put on it being cold in April from Tucker, who the speed wasn't a surprise. Like he's always had that tool. So to see that so far down is, kind of a red flag when you mix it with the fact that, he doesn't have any stolen base. He doesn't have any, I don't think he has any. Yeah, he doesn't even have an attempt. So it's only a couple weeks in, but for a Houston Astros team that has been decreasing their stolen base attempts already in the past couple of years, actually past, like, I think their attempts have went down for like 4 years in a row. And then this year, it's like, they're 23rd in stolen bases. They're 24th in attempts and 25th in attempts per plate appearance. So it's like, this is a team that is not running early, and Tucker is not running early. And when he does run, he's much slower than he's been in years past. So I'm a little worried if I'm a Tucker owner. I mean, besides the fact that he's not hitting, is the fact that he's not even making up for it by running when he does get on base. So yeah, well, it's early, but you need to keep a big eye on Kyle Tucker, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's disappointing in pretty much every facet, but the thing is, you didn't get him for the speed primarily, but he's one of those guys that, like, if you didn't go, early on, if you think that your first round pick was a pitcher, or maybe not one of those guys who's going to get you 20, 30 steals like an Acuna or Tatis, then you could say, okay, well, I'll get at least double digits from him, right? And maybe somewhere else. And you feel like he could be a decent source of speed that you don't have to make up for it later, but it doesn't look that way. Really, no one running in Houston, not even Miles Straw, but let's not go there.
I know, super annoying.
Yeah, beyond annoying. And then our last player who's definitely annoying us, although not me because I have no shares. It's been a long time since I had a share of Trevor Story, but I had the feeling this might not be his year with everything going on in Colorado. It hasn't been his year. Talking about the speed primarily, he doesn't even have a home run, which is crazy. He does have one steal, but he's been caught twice, so definitely not the same level of success. As far as sprint speed itself, it's actually not that bad, right? He hasn't been one of these guys that's seen a decline. So I'm feeling this might be something that has more to do with the team context, just the fact that they're the Rockies, and I mean, what's your take on Story? Because he's clearly not a guy that anybody's going to be looking to move in the trade market for fantasy because you know what he's capable of. But I mean, do you feel like a down season might be coming for him?
No, not really. I think it's, like you mentioned, his sprint speed stuff, like, starting there, it's, once again, you look, his overall sprint speed has went down. It was 28.9 last year. It's 27.8 this year, but his home plate to first is career high of 4.42 this year. After, it was 4.27 last year. Every year before that, it was like 4.17. So like that, I'm not that worried about. The hitting, I'm not that worried about. I think it's more that I think we got spoiled a little bit last year. I mean, he had 15 stolen bases in 59 games. Uh, so over that's a over 30 home run pace, and it's like a 35 stolen base pace in a full season, and his previous high was 27 stolen bases in 2018, 23 in 2019. So I think that's the bigger takeaway, is just like, yeah, Trevor Story didn't turn into a big stolen base threat that it may have looked like last year. He's probably going to steal about, he's a 20 stolen base guy. He's not a 30 guy. that he was showing last year. So I think that's the biggest takeaway. Like I'm not worried about the speed overall. I'm more worried about this, same things I was worried about going into this season, just the kind of situation, losing Arenado and just Colorado generally being a mess, and Story looking like, just kind of looked out like he was going to be the guy that doesn't escape. Like he's going to be the one that is just going to be stuck in Colorado. And that's fine for fantasy purposes because we like him hitting in that atmosphere. But yeah, I'm not. I think this is just a slow April start for Trevor Story. I don't like you. I didn't have a lot of exposure to him this year because it's I find it hard to take early shortstops just because there's so many of them for one thing, and uh, you know if I'm going to take a first round shortstop, it was going to be Trey Turner. So I I don't have any story. I don't have any dog in this fight, but he'll bounce back and he's going to put up Trevor Story numbers when it's all said and done. It's not going to come with 30 stolen bases. It's probably going to come with 20.
Yeah. I don't think we should be overly concerned about this because, again, it is early. You could have a game where he steals a couple and all of a sudden he's up there near the leaderboard. That's how early it is. But yeah, I'll just say we'll end with this because, the point of what we do is to really dive into the metrics, especially the Statcast numbers, and break it down and look for trends and patterns. But, when I do my rankings and when I assess a player too, I think a lot of times we have to factor in those kind of intangibles and things. And with Story, there was absolutely no reason to be concerned. If anything, we should be up on him from last year, right? Because he stole more bases, and people having him, as a solid first round pick. But then you look, what's happening in Colorado. I mean, you just have to think about it from his perspective. He can't be too excited about the fact that he knows, number one, he's stuck there, right? Arenado got his way, he's out. He's in the promised land of St. Louis. Everyone would be thrilled to be there. But also, the fact is that he is probably not going to be getting an extension. They've already said, yeah, we don't have money to sign, players. So he's going to have to be looking for a new home. With less support in the lineup, the counting stats overall might have been down. So all of those factors together, I think, well, maybe he's just going to be a little bit down from last year. And so that was my thing. I didn't knock him down a huge amount, but still expecting him to do, at the steal bases at the same rate as last year to produce more than he has in the past. It's just, that wasn't realistic. So he might get to 20 steals. I mean, it's possible, but I think this might be a down year for him kind of just overall. And that probably goes for everybody in Colorado. So, all right, so that's been 3 Up, 3 Down for sprint speed. And don't forget to check out our pitcher edition, where we also talk about individual pitch values. You're definitely not going to want to miss that. We're here to help break things down for you, to help you win. That's why we're here. Check out our work on RotoBaller.com. We also write lots of articles that, well, let's face it, not quite as exciting as our audio-visual version of us, but we still are pretty good with writing words too. All right, guys. Thanks for watching.